Hi everybody, how are you all today? So this is just a quick little repair for my neighbor who purchased this radio for his classic car, and it's one of the old style shaft mount radios where the volume and tuning knobs are actually what mounts the radio inside the dash. So you don't see these very much anymore because all modern cars have the DIN type radios, and some of them don't even have that anymore. Now they all have just, it's built into your your display system of your dash. But he was able to find this. It's a Clarion model 9702 RT, which is actually was a pretty decent little radio in its day. And he bought it brand new in the box, still sealed. He found it online. But when he installed it into his car, the radio worked perfectly, but of course the tape didn't play properly. It had a lot of wow and flutter. And of course that was because the belts, even though they were brand new and it's been sitting for 30 years, the belts had stretched and deteriorated. Now we don't know what the belts look like because I haven't taken this apart, but I just went ahead and I ordered what I think are the correct ones for here. And I did test it out. And one of the problems was the original harness that came with it is in the car. It's already wired in, and he didn't want to take it back out. But of course, you need to be able to test this thing. And these wiring harnesses are just plug-in like this. Now, this is a very generic, they make two different types of these. This one is a 12-pin, and they also make a 14-pin. And they look like this same kind of connector. And a lot of the manufacturers at the time used this same connector system. So this is a Clarion. I know that, for instance, like some of the Kenwoods and several other ones like Sanyo, I think, different models used this, but they all had their own pin out. So if you order one online, you try to order a replacement like this, as you can see, the colors of the wires don't match up between what I have and what they have. And so you're going to get a miswired. If you just try to connect your radio with something you purchased on the internet, it's most likely not going to be wired. Now this one I ordered, and it actually said it was for a Clarion radio, but it's actually wired for Kenwood. Most of the people selling these now don't know the difference. They just see the connector type and they assume that this will fit every single radio. Well, it will. The wires are wrong. So you have to go through and look that up. Now on here, it kind of shows you, but it doesn't tell you what pin is what. So you first have to figure out what the pin out is. On this instance, I lucked out because I was able to find the complete service manual for this thing and print it out off of the internet. And so it gave us a little bit of help with that. And if you look along the side here, it shows the pins of that connector. And they were nowhere near wired that way. So if you want to take a screenshot of this, if you have one of these radios, the only one that you don't see on here is pin 1, and it's all the way up here. Pin 1 is your backup or your yellow wire. That's the one that holds the power for the clock and so forth. The rest of these are all on here. So what you need to do is if you get one of these, you're going to have to push the pins out, and in order to do that, you're going to need to go and order a set of these pin tools, and they look kind of like this. You can buy them very inexpensively. Now I have really expensive ones that I use at work that you can buy, but they're hundreds of dollars sometimes. But these cheap ones here work just right. And all you do is you find the proper little tool that will fit in alongside here, and you can get around the connector. Like this one's too big, you need a smaller one. And I have several different versions of this, or you can use one of these round ones. Sometimes they'll fit over top. This one probably won't. Maybe. Yeah, and you can push this in, it'll release the little latches, and then you can pull these pins out and then swap them around. So that's what I did with this one, but could do the same for this. So I have a couple of these. So after doing that, you can hook it up and test it and see what's going on. And like I said, the radio works perfectly. We'll demonstrate it after we're done. But take my word, it needs to have the two belts replaced. All right, I think everything's in view here. So the knobs just pull right off. Some of you younger folks may not have ever worked with these, but I can tell you I lost count of how many hundreds of these I installed way back when. I worked for a audio store when I was in college and right after college to make some side money. I did bench work for them, and then I helped the installers with installing these, and then I worked for another place where I was an installer for car radios and things. So did lots of these. So that pops off. You can take this off here, but I'm just going to move it out of the way. It's not going to interfere with what we're doing. Now, the nose piece on here needs to come off. And you have to be really careful, because even though this is a brand new radio, it's been sitting for 30, maybe even 40 years. And this plastic, on certain ones, the plastic will get very brittle. And there's these little tabs. You can see one here is a little clip, and another one over here. They need to be flexed in ever so slightly so you can pop this off of there. So I like to use my fingers to just kind of feel it, and there it popped and nothing broke. This plastic is actually still in pretty good shape. Then you have these little knobs. Sometimes these little buttons will fall off. These ones are clipped on, so you'll be all right. Now we have to disconnect all the connections to the tape transport in order to get it out, but we have to first of all loosen it, and there's a couple things that have to come out. Let me look at this one. I think, yeah, this one you have to take the faceplate off to be able to get the transport out. So that's going to require straightening this little tab out, and it'll be bent a little bit, and that keeps it from moving. And then we should be able to slide this off, possibly. Let me see if there's any other screws in there. Yeah, I think I have to take something else off here. I forget. Or no, maybe I don't. I can leave this on. It'll be okay. I'm remembering here. Okay, now there should be some screws holding this in. And it appears on this one that there's 3 of them. There's one here, and one here. And I'm going to need a small set of pliers to be able to get that out, because these will often, this screwdriver isn't magnetic enough to pick screws up. I don't use highly magnetized tools. I mean, these are a little bit, but you kind of have to watch when you're working around tapes and things. And even things that are slightly magnetized, I will keep them away from any of my cassette tapes that I have, because cassette tapes and magnets don't go well together. But you'd be surprised. Tapes are a lot more resilient than you might think. And even though they might be around a little magnet here and there, a lot of times it doesn't hurt them unless you get the magnet really close. Okay. Those 3 should be all we need. Yeah. And see that tab I was talking about? This doesn't come off. The tab actually pulls back. So we're going to take this back a little bit. And that comes off. Let's see if we can get this up out of here. What am I stuck on? There we go. This little ground. Let me move this ground tab out of the way slightly. That made it a little difficult. Okay. And there's your belt. There's actually 2 belts. See them? And you can usually find those online, although you'll have to take some measurements. this plug comes off here, that's for the motor. And then this plug is for the switches and so forth for the transport. And then we have the tape head, which that plug is underneath here, which means we're going to have to remove this. So in order to do that, I have to loosen, let me see if I have something better to do that. So I can loosen that up. Now let me try this first. Maybe this will just be enough to get it loose. These are usually not really tight. Yeah, there we go. And there's a catch plate that holds this in so we can get this out of the way. Just like that. And there's our tape head. So now we can get a little pair of pliers and just very carefully take this out like that. And just like that, the tape transport is out. So now we have to be able to get to these belts. And to do that, we have to take these off. So I will need a smaller screwdriver like this, because these are smaller Phillips head screws. So we'll take these off. Isn't this fun? We'll just do this whole video real time. Okay, and there it is. So this big belt looks as if it will be pretty easy to remove. So what I'll do is I'll take a picture of the belt the way it is so that we know how it goes. Then I will grab some tweezers if I have them here. Let's see what I got. Grab these ones. They should work. And I'll pop this belt off. Am I still recording? Yes. I'm going to move the camera back a little bit so that you can see everything I'm doing here. Okay. So that one will be easy. This one, as you can see, it goes underneath this little plate. So this has to be removed. Now, some of these things will fall out when you take them apart. So I'm not sure about that. We may have a gear come out or something. But we'll take a look. So we have these little, tiny little black screws that have to come out. I'll just grab those here and try not to drop them. See if I can get it with these maybe, if they'll fit. There we go. And there's two here. So there's one here, one here. Brings back bad memories. I don't like working on these little mechanical tape things. I'm not a tape deck repair person. I love tape decks. I really like them. But I don't like working on them. It requires a lot of patience. Okay, let's see if this thing springs all over the place here when we take it out. It should come off as an assembly. Well, I can just lift it like that, maybe. That might be good enough. GE. Okay. And there went the gear. So let's see if I can get that back in there. And then we don't know if gears came decoupled or not. I don't even know how this thing's in there. It might be stuck. I'm not going to mess with it. Oh, I see there's a spring clip here that has to come out. See it? So you can pull this back. It'll clip off of that right there, and then that'll let this come out. So I should have done that first. Silly me. So I'm going to move this out and over like that. So you can see how that is. And now that it's free, now I can take this off. Again, you want to make sure, so there you go, there's your gears. Do not move these now in any way, shape, or form, because the way this goes back together, this little actuator here has to go into this slot right here. All of these have to be in their, these cams and so forth have to be in their correct position. So you just lift it straight off and you put it straight back down in. That's what I was talking about, things can move. Okay, now I ordered a few belts that I think for Clarion should fit. And the first thing I'll do is here's the first one. And if I line it up with this one, you can see it's ever so slightly smaller. So this I think will be a good one right here. So this is the original and this is the new one, and the new one's even a tiny little bit thicker. It's hard to find exact replacements. So this belt should work for this one. And then I have this belt, which appears to be, again, just slightly smaller. You don't want them to be real tight. That's the other thing. See, like this might be too tight. That's too tight. I don't like that one. So I ordered a different one. Let me see what I have here. I have several different kinds, and I have some generic belts also, but I don't like to use these. These are very high quality belts here. So let's see what I have. I have 3 other ones here. Let's see. That's definitely too small. And these are the same size, apparently. Okay. And see that gear fell out? Okay. And that's loose enough. And it's also tight enough. So that should be a good one right there. And that's a little bit thick too. Let me see if I have a better one. Let's see there. No, maybe not. That should work. It fits in there pretty well. If you notice, this one's a little bit thinner, but if a belt's too thick, it can slow the transport down, and you can get wow and flutter from that as well. So I may look and see what I have in my inventory. Let me take a look here. Okay, going through my belt stash, I found this one, and this looks like almost a perfect replacement. So let's put it on and see how it fits. That's too loose, so I need to go a little bit smaller. So let me look again. Okay, let me try this one. Go here. Bring it around here. That one is perfect. Okay, so I'll put these other ones back away, and that's done. Set this out of the way for now. I'll put these all in with my belt stash. And what they have you do is they send you these little cleaners, and they are alcohol, yes. You should not soak belts in alcohol, but when you get a brand new belt, they have some powder on them, and that's to help preserve them a little bit, and they just want you to clean that off very quickly. So I'm just going to use that, and you can see it just takes some of that off, and then it just cleans that powder off of the belt. Okay, now this, we have to figure out where it went, and you can see there's a post sticking up here. So this is going to go on like that, and it's going to mesh up with this gear and this gear. And hopefully I'm looking at the oil and the grease on it. The oil and grease are still very, very good. So this does not need to be oiled. So I'm going to hold this in, flip it back around, and I should be able to just put this right back on here. And there you go. It dropped right into place. See that? And the idea is you shouldn't have to force it down. It should fit flush all the way around, and this one does. If there's a big gap up here, it means that you have some teeth that aren't meshed up. And you can just move it a little bit and you'll feel it. See? There's no mushiness. Everything's moving just fine. So now I'm going to put these screws back in. Like that. Don't over tighten them. This is a very good little tape transport. You can see all the metal pieces, and it doesn't have I mean, the plastic gears are actually pretty decent ones. Some of the really high-end tape transports off of the, the home audio decks, they'll have brass gears or steel gears. But these plastic ones are actually not bad. And this doesn't use those idler tires or anything like that that go bad. This just has 2 belts and everything else is gears. And as long as the gears are properly oiled and the little sliding parts have proper type of an amount of grease on them, these will last a really long time. So let's take this, and you can see we have to put this back in. So we're going to slide it back, move this over here, and then pop it back over. And there you go. That's back in place. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this up here a little bit, although it looks brand new. Again, this thing was brand new in the box. If this were a used tape deck and the belts were old and crusty, you want to go through with either some isopropyl alcohol or possibly some even acetone, like nail polish remover. Don't use nail polish remover on plastic gears because it will sometimes dissolve the plastic. Some plastics, not all plastics. If you notice, nail polish remover comes in a plastic container, so not all plastics are affected, but some are. So just be careful. But alcohol, you can use that, no problem. And we're just going to clean that off, and you can see there's no crud or anything came off of there, so this is good. So now we're going to put our belt on. And it goes like this. If I recall correctly, this will go over here and around this way. And then this one goes over this pulley here. And then we should be able to stretch it over here. Whoops. And it actually fits pretty good. But everything wants to fall off. There you go. Don't worry if it's got a twist in it. We'll work the twist out of it when we get everything over the pulleys. Like that. Okay, so that's all connected. And you can see that works perfectly. So now what I'm going to do is, this belt has a little twist here. So while I'm operating it, I'm going to just rotate this a little bit till it goes around. And there, that pops that twist out of there, see? And then I'm going to look all the way around and make sure there's no more twists, and there aren't. And this belt's ready to go. Simple as that. So now we're going to reverse the process. So let's put our plate on. There we go. And we'll put this back on. And again, if this were an old tape deck and it was worn and the grease and the oil was dried out, you would go through, and I just use a little bit of white lithium grease for the things that are sliding, And for the things that are just little gears and so forth, I just use some sewing machine oil like this in a syringe. And you can buy these syringes with the blunt tips on eBay, Amazon, wherever. And it's just some basic sewing machine oil, or sometimes you can use some 3-in-1 machine oil, real thin, and just put a couple drops on there. Actually, the sewing machine's oil is good because it's a little bit more viscous and it sticks to those gears a little better, and works really well on sliding parts as well. But you could see that this one was still wet. It was still good. You can see all the grease and oil is still really good on here. You see the grease there is nice and pliable. So this is good. We're in good shape. All right, let's bring this back in. I'll move this out of my way. And we're going to put this back in here. So let's move this plug out of the way first. And kind of fidgety. And I'm going to just see if I can plug this in with my fingers. If I can't, I'll have to use a pair of tweezers or pliers or something. But there we go. It went in. Just make sure it's seated. And we'll put this back on, like so. And there's a little pin on the bottom here that this plate falls into, and then you can tighten this in. And since I worked on that Yamaha deck, I should still have a tape sitting out here someplace, because I just did that a couple weeks ago. There we go. I can tighten that with a proper wrench later. Now let's plug this in. Get this slid back in here. Make sure this little slot, this little tab goes through the little slot, which it is not right now. There we go. And again, this should just be seated down here properly. If it's sticking up, something's not right. Just take your time. Get it lined up. And what I do is I start the 3 screws first, but I don't tighten them. Let's see if I can drop this screw, if I can get it in there. There we go. There's that one. And then this last one here. Just like that. Now that they're all in, I can tighten them. Then I'm going to take this tab and give it just a slight bend. And then I'm going to take this tab and bend it back down where it was with the little ground wire. And we should be able to put this back together now. Oh, I have one more connector, the motor connector. Let's get that on. And it should be ready to go. So I'm going to take that and slide it through here. Now some of these, I don't think this one's that issue. Yeah, some of these you have to open the door a little bit to get it to start. Just like that. Make sure. And then line it up. We have to lift this off here a little bit. I shouldn't have put that on first. There's one end. There's the other end. It's good. Now we can put this back on. Everything should be properly lined up. And it just kind of falls into place. Hey. There. Okay. So let's put this screw in here. And I'll put the screenshot of the schematic up here. Well, not a screenshot, but I'll put it here on the bench, and you can screenshot it and print it out if you like, or save it to a PDF or whatever you want to do. So here's the schematic for the tape deck. Okay, here you go. And that is the schematic. And here are the adjustments. You want to pause and print that out. And I think the rest of this, so here's a couple of things like some specs. Here's some more specs. And even more specs. Explanation of the integrated circuits. Part numbers, which will help you to find belts and things like that. And then there's the exploded view. And there's individual circuit diagrams for the tuner, AM and FM. Exploded view parts list. And the board layout. I'll zoom you on that a little bit so you can see it more closely. And then the parts list. So there's lots of parts lists here. And that should do it. By the way, I don't believe that these are the original knobs that came with this radio. I think the owner had these retro looking ones that would match his car a little more closely, so he put them on. They're the same, they fit the same shaft and everything. They're just new ones. The original ones were real short, and they were black to match the outer knobs. But I think that'll make it look a little more authentic. So I kind of agree with him on that. In case you were wondering, the small belt is, if you just measure the belt in half like that, you don't want it to be tight on there, just loose, but folded. And you take that number and you double it. So if this is 1 3/4 inches, then the total belt diameter or circumference would be 3.5 or 3.5 inches. So this would be a 3.5 inch belt. Now this one is too long to do this way, so you'll have to use a ruler. And again, you just take this, and I'll take something like my tweezers, and I'll hold it there, and then I'll take a little something else that's pointier, kind of like this, and I'll pull it straight, but without really stretching it a whole lot. You can see right there, that looks about 7 3/4 roughly, and it's stretched, so let's say 7.5. So that would be a 15-inch belt. So if you went with a 15-inch belt, you do have a little wiggle room. So if you get one that's a little bit smaller, it won't hurt it. You just don't want it to be so small that it puts a lot of stretching tension on it, because that could damage the bearing, the little bushing in the motors and in the gears and so forth. So that'll give you an idea if you need to order one of these, what it is. Or you could just look at the part number on there. In a lot of places, you can use the part number and they'll cross it over on some websites. Okay, so I have all of the little connections made, and this is the left rear and right rear would be the green and the purple respectively. And then the front speakers would be these white ones and gray ones. The blue wire is for an power antenna. So if you had a, and I don't know if that's used on this one or not, it might be. And then the yellow and the red are tied together because the red is the main power for the amplifier and for the receiver. The yellow is for holding the memory on the clock and everything, so that it remembers your station settings, you know, your presets and your clock. And then your ground is the black wire, and that's it. It's connected. So I have my power supply set to 12.5 volts. Yes, it's a 12-volt system, but most cars, the voltage can go up to like 13.8 volts when the alternator is running. So these radios can work just fine on clear up to 13.8. And if you actually put the voltage a little bit above the 12 volts, you actually can get a little bit more power out of the amplifier. Little trick there. But just know what you're doing and understand how that works. So I have it set to 12.5. Now, for connecting the antenna, if you want to use your antenna in the house, they make these little connectors. And what this at first looks like is a BNC to an RCA connector, but it's not. A regular RCA plug, if I have one here, for instance, if you notice, has a much shorter center pin. This is actually an antenna adapter. And you can buy these, again, on lots of places, eBay and AliExpress and Amazon and everybody else. And that way you can just connect your coax to your, your antenna port. And then this just plugs right into the back, into the antenna connector. If I can see what I'm doing. Like that. And now we have an antenna. Okay, power supply on. Let's see if this turns on. And it probably would help if I turn my speakers on. Okay.
How long does that rather mythical situation ever last?
It's better than that. Take Saturday and multiply.
All right. Very good. So the tuner you can hear is awesome. I mean, it works really well on this. It's a really sensitive tuner. Let me see if I can find a tape, and let's see if we achieved success.
Another #1 hit of 1945 with the unforgettable Vaughn Monroe.
There I said it again.
And here's Stan Kenton swinging Tampico, one of the year's hottest jitterbug tunes.
Aye, Tampico.
And forget the romantic rhythms of Xavier Cugat with Bing Crosby crooning, "You Belong to My Heart."
You belong to my heart, now and forever. And our love had its start.
So this is Your Hit Parade, sample cassette demonstration only. Where do I get all this stuff? Can't play that for very long, but you can hear it works perfect. So I'm going to let this run for a little bit. I'll let these belts kind of work in a little bit. Sometimes they'll get a little bit of memory from sitting for so long. Even though they're new belts, they still need to be broken in a little bit. So I'll let this play through this tape. If everything's good, I'm going to send it back to my neighbor. So hope you all enjoyed this little video. I wish you all peace, joy, happiness, and good health in your lives, and we'll see you again real soon for the next project. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.